Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with the Mighty Jingles. You've been asking for it for a while, so today we're going to be taking a look at some destroyer gameplay, starting at Tier 2 in the US Navy destroyer line, with the Samson class. The Samson was the last of 6 classes of ship, built for the US Navy and serving in frontline service all the way through the First World War, up until the 1930s, known as the 1,000-tonners. Why were they called the 1,000-tonners? Well, it's not a trick question. They were exactly that. They all displaced at least 1,000 tons. There were 6 types of ship, known as the 1,000-tonners, beginning with the Cassin class, the Aylwin class, the O'Briens, the Tuckers, and the Samsons, which were the last of the 1,000-tonners to be built. The reason why the US Navy suddenly started at the turn of the 20th century to start building 5 different classes of destroyers that were so much bigger than anything they'd built before was because, once again, they realised they had a bit of a capability gap. They needed something that was heavily armed and had a good cruising range, because at the time the US Navy only had 3 light cruisers, the Chester class. 6 Samson-class destroyers were built for the US Navy during World War I between 1915 and 1916. They all saw service as convoy escorts, escorting troop ships and supply ships between America and Europe, and they all saw service performing anti-submarine warfare duties, patrolling for U-boats off the coast of Ireland and Great Britain. After the First World War was over, 3 of them were transferred to the US Coast Guard for further duties. The other 3 were retained in the US Navy, with 2 being scrapped in 1934. 1, however, continued in US Navy service. This was the USS Allen, the DD-66. The USS Allen actually continued in US Navy service all the way through the Second World War. She participated in the defense of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, after which she was used to escort ships as they travelled between the various different islands in the Hawaiian chain, as well as patrolling for enemy submarines in the same area. In fact, for a lot of American submarine crews, the first time they actually engaged in actual combat, even though it was simulated, against a surface ship, it was against the USS Allen, as she was used to train up American submarine crews before they ventured further west into the Pacific in search of the Japanese. At the time she was scrapped in 1946, the USS Allen, Samson-class destroyer, was the longest-serving vessel on the US Navy's register, and one of the very, very few US Navy warships to be built and see combat during World War I, as well as survive and see combat during World War II. So, Samson-class destroyer at Tier 2. What exactly do you get for your money? Well, the good news is this is the first American warship you're going to get your hands on that's armed with torpedoes. The bad news is they're American torpedoes, and they're absolutely terrible. American destroyers in World of Warships are basically the complete opposite of Japanese destroyers in World of Warships. The Japanese have great torpedoes and terrible guns. The Americans have terrible torpedoes and great guns, which means you have to play American destroyers in a completely different style to Japanese destroyers, whereas Japanese destroyers kind of work as long-range, fast snipers. The American destroyers are gunboats, and you have to master the art of ambush tactics, because you often have to close to suicidally short ranges with enemy shipping in order to successfully launch a torpedo spread against them. If you want to play World of Warships in adrenaline mode, play an American destroyer, because the life of an American destroyer captain is rarely boring. And to show you why that is, let's take a look at the stats of the ship. Looking at the Samson's torpedo armament, the stock torpedo weapon that you're equipped with is the Whitehead Mark V. This was actually a very early British design, adopted for use by the US Navy in 1910, and it's a disaster. It only has a range of 4.5 kilometers, and it only has a speed of 49 knots. In its defense, it was the first torpedo adopted by major navies that actually allowed the firing ship to adjust the speed and range of the torpedo, although that just meant you could adjust the range from very short to even shorter and the speed from very slow to even slower. Thankfully, you do at least get the option to upgrade to the Mark VII Bliss Levitt torpedo, manufactured by the E.W. Bliss Company in the USA to a design by Frank McDowell Levitt, hence the name. Now, this was actually quite an advanced torpedo when it was first introduced. Unfortunately, the US Navy was still using it in World War II, when it wasn't an advanced torpedo, and its Japanese counterpart, the Type 93, was significantly faster and much, much harder to spot in the water. The only advantage the Mark VII has over the Whitehead Mark V is that it's a little bit faster. It will do 54 knots. It still has that terrible 4.5 kilometer range, however. Why is 4.5 kilometers such a deal breaker, Jingles? Well, remember, if you're sailing up against battleships, 4.5 kilometers is starting to sail within range of their secondary armaments, never mind their main batteries. Which means if your torpedoes have that range and you're going up against something like a Congo, the Congo captain doesn't even have to be aware that you're there to start shooting at you. His secondary batteries will do the job all on their own. The Mark 7 also didn't have a terribly large warhead. It only had 326 pounds of TNT or Torpex, which meant that you often had to hit an enemy ship, even a destroyer, more than once in order to sink it. And it's when we're looking at the torpedo armament of the Samson that we run into our first historical inaccuracy. You see, what made the Samson so different from the other 1,000-tonner destroyers that preceded it was that the Samson had significantly more powerful torpedo armament. It had 12 tubes, 4 triple launchers, rather than the 4 twin launchers that the other 1,000-tonners were equipped with, and as you can see here in World of Warships, it doesn't. It only has 8 tubes, same as the other 1,000-tonners. Not sure why, most likely some game balance reason. I have to admit, this thing running around with 12 torpedo tubes at Tier 2 probably would be a little overpowered, regardless of the range on them. But this is an American destroyer, and it's not all about the torpedoes, which is just as well. This thing also has 4 102mm guns, and they're not bad. 1 at the front, 1 at the back, and 1 on either side, which means you can have a maximum of 3 guns pointing towards a target at any given time. Now 3 guns is not a lot, but the rate of fire on these things is fantastic. These guns fire at a rate of 8.6 rounds per minute, and with 3 guns on target at once, that's more than 25 shots per minute at whatever you're shooting. And when your armor-piercing shells are doing just short of 2,000 damage and your high-explosive shells are doing just short of 1,000 damage, that kind of firepower soon starts to add up. But perhaps the most important statistic associated with these guns is the 180-degree turn time. It's only 18 seconds. Now, what that means is because you do have to close to very short ranges in order to have a chance of hitting a target with the torpedoes that you launch from the Samson, it means that as you're frantically manoeuvring to avoid return fire, you are able to keep your guns pointed at them and keep up a withering barrage of high-explosive or armor-piercing shells. And this is a significant weakness with the Japanese destroyers because they just can't do that. Japanese destroyers have very, very slow turning turrets. In some cases they turn even slower than some of the Japanese cruisers. And what that means is that if you're engaged in a close range fight with a Japanese destroyer and you're in an American destroyer, as long as you're not dumb enough to run into any of his torpedoes, you're always going to beat him, providing you keep the speed up and you keep manoeuvring, because he is just not going to be able to keep his guns bearing on you. Alternatively, if a life of danger and romance is not the kind of thing that appeals to you, then you can keep this ship at ranges in excess of 5.9 kilometers, where you are outside of this ship's surface detectability range, and just keep shooting your guns out to a range of 8.6 kilometers. And this is often why you'll see American destroyers popping in and out of view. They're outside that magic 5.9 kilometer number, and you're only really seeing them when they fire their guns. And, of course, as they pop in and out of view, you're losing target lock on them, and it's very, very difficult to score a hit on a rapidly moving ship, a very small, rapidly moving ship like a Samson-class destroyer, when you can't accurately predict where he's going to be from one moment to the next. There's not a massive amount to upgrade on the Samson. There's the torpedoes, which we've already talked about. There's also the hull upgrade, which leads to the Wix-class destroyer at Tier 3, gives you a little bit extra health, and 1 extra 37mm Maxim anti-aircraft gun for a grand total of 2. I often find it's a very, very good idea, at least initially when you start the game in a destroyer, to press P to turn off your anti-aircraft guns. The reason for that is you're not going to shoot anything down with 2 37mm anti-aircraft guns anyway, and all it's going to do is give your position away and get you shot at, and the Samson is an American destroyer. Stealth and surprise are its single biggest advantages, particularly when you're trying to get close enough to an enemy ship to be able to launch torpedoes undetected. And then finally, there's the fire control system upgrade, and there's nothing glamorous or exciting about the fire control system upgrades. They pretty much all do the same thing. They increase the range of your primary armament by 10%, up to a maximum range here on the Samson of 8.6 kilometers. There may also be a hidden accuracy buff, but I don't know. If it is, it's a hidden stat. Right, well, I think that's quite enough talking for one intro. Let's run this thing up the flagpole and see who salutes. So, what to do and what not to do in American destroyers. This is what you don't do in American destroyers. 4.5 kilometer torpedo range does not mean that you have to close to within 500 meters of an enemy battleship. At that sort of range, the battleship doesn't even have to know he's there. His secondary batteries are going to be doing all the damage to this little destroyer. And there you go. Now, he did manage to launch all of his torpedoes into that battleship, and the battleship is so heavily damaged and is taking on so much flooding damage that he is going to sink him. But he could have done pretty much exactly the same thing from the other side of that island. Popped out, launched his torpedoes, and then popped back in to the concealment provided by that smokescreen. Instead, he killed the battleship, but now he's dead too. Well, how would you have done it, Jingles? Well, allow me to demonstrate on an enemy St. Louis. There he is. St. Louis, Tier 3 cruiser. Very, very heavily armed, but not particularly fast. A couple of shots out. I'm firing high explosive here. I'm attempting to hit the rear of the ship so I can knock out his steering. And he has seen me, and I am anticipating being shot at by the St. Louis, so I am already manoeuvring. Now he's just run into the map border, which is going to make it very difficult to predict which way he's going to turn. But there's a friendly cruiser here and me, and he's not interested in any of that, so he's turned around and he's heading back the other direction, which allows me to dodge his fire. Now that I've got this island between me and him, there's an enemy battleship up there at extreme range. I'll put a couple of shots into him because there's nothing else for me to shoot at, and he won't be able to see me at this kind of range. I do score a couple of hits, but my primary target is that cruiser. Now the smoke screen that was up ahead has dispersed, so I'm going to have to use my own. I've selected a narrow spread on my torpedoes, and I'm trying to use as much of this island as concealment as possible. I popped my smoke generator, hoping he's not going to see me. And remember, I need to close to within at least 4.5 kilometers. Start turning. He has seen me. He's firing. He may be firing blind. He might be only able to partially see me as I pop in and out of vision inside this smoke screen. So I'm not firing at him, but no, screw it. Yeah, he has definitely seen me. High explosive loaded. I've been set on fire. I've had a gun battery knocked out. Screw this. Start manoeuvring. Get the hell out of here. But my torpedoes are running true, and he's going to take at least one of them. There's one. There's another one. Not enough to sink him, but that's going to force him to use his damage control ability to stop the flooding so he doesn't take on even more damage. Now, I have momentarily run aground here, but I've managed to run aground inside the smoke screen, so he's lost track of me, and he's now shooting at the cruiser, in fact 2 cruisers, further to the east. And I've managed to turn the ship around, which means that I have another 4 torpedo tubes on the other side. Should be 6, you know, we're being completely historically accurate, but 4 will do. And I know that he's just used his damage control ability, and it's now going to be on cooldown, so how many of these are going to hit him? Just the 1, but it's knocked out some of his guns, and he is going to be flooding again. And now he's on fire. Well, that wasn't me, but again, this is damage that he is unable to prevent because he's already used his damage control ability in order to put out the flooding caused by my first 2 torpedo hits. So he's pretty screwed now. High explosive up again. Just want to keep that fire burning. Possibly set more fires, knock out more gun turrets, cripple his steering, destroy his engine, and there you go. That's my kill, thanks to the flooding from the second torpedo hit, which he was unable to do anything about because he'd already used his damage control ability to stop the flooding from the first 2 torpedo hits. So, one St. Louis class Tier 3 cruiser taken care of, with some assistance from my team. I didn't do it alone, but I took minimal damage doing it because I made intelligent use of what concealment was available, and when there wasn't any concealment I generated my own with my smoke dispensers. I didn't just steam right up to him and unleash a salvo of torpedoes right into his face. You don't want to be getting into gunnery duels at close range with St. Louis class cruisers. And you definitely don't want to be doing it against battleships of any description because you're in a destroyer. You will lose. It's customary at this point for somebody in the comments to point out the heroic actions of the destroyers and destroyer escorts of the task group Taffy 3 during the Battle of the Philippines, and yeah, you're absolutely right. A bunch of destroyers and destroyer escorts did go up against a whole bunch of massive Japanese battleships, but they didn't do it because they wanted to. They did it because they had to. Big difference. And right now I pretty much have to go up against this battleship and its 2 escorting cruisers because we're going to lose. The enemy team are about to take control of B. They're already ahead on points, and that's going to give them an insurmountable lead. The only way we're going to win this game is to kill these 3 guys here, which is going to subtract points from the enemy score and give points to us, and recapture B. Unfortunately, we just keep losing ships, and the only thing that's keeping me in the game at this stage is the fact that they're all shooting at ships in front of them, and they haven't actually paid any attention to me yet, but two cruisers. The two cruisers are a bigger problem than the battleship. Battleships, if they're stupid enough to fire their main guns at destroyers, then great, because it means that they're not killing cruisers on my team, but battleships generally don't waste time shooting at destroyers unless there's nothing else to shoot at, because it takes so long to turn those guns around, and destroyers are such small targets. If you miss when you're firing in a battleship, it takes an awful long time to get a second salvo loaded into those guns. So the cruisers are going to be the big problem, and I'm just trying to get as close as I possibly can before these guys start paying attention. Come on. Come on. And I can't believe I managed to get as close as this before these guys eventually started shooting at me. But that St. Louis at the back, he's looking like he's going to be the easiest one to kill. And I'm just not doing damage to him with armor piercing. Oh, he's seen me now. Okay. Now, yeah. I've definitely been spotted, so once again, I deploy my smoke screen and try to get as close as I possibly can to this St. Louis. My gunfire is ineffective because I can only really shoot at him with my forward battery, because I'm trying to get as close as I possibly can. He's now managed to turn sideways on, so he's getting... And the fire's coming in from the cruiser on the other side as well. Torpedoes away. I'm probably not going to survive this. He's taken out my steering. He's knocked out my torpedo tube, but it didn't matter because I've already launched, and then I get taken out by the cruiser on the other side. But wait for it. Wait for it. Hold on a minute. Any second now. There you go. We'd lost this game anyway, so I just really wanted to get as much damage done as possible. In our second replay, once again, it's a tier 3 match. Once again, I'm in the Samson. What I'd initially tried to do at the start of this match was rush the A point and capture it for the team. And that's definitely something that destroyer drivers should have in the forefront of their mind when they're looking at where they're going to go at the start of a game, because you're in, if not the fastest, then one of the fastest ships on your team. And also, you're in one of the most hard-to-spot ships on your team. And that's what I tried to do at the start of this match. Unfortunately, as I approached the A point, I ran into at least 2 enemy destroyers and 2 enemy cruisers, so I popped my smoke generators and I got the hell out of there. A is a bit of a no-go. But that's when we spotted this enemy St. Louis cruiser, who, for reasons known only to himself, has decided to split off from the rest of the pack and go it alone over on this side of the map. And in what rapidly became something like a scene out of Finding Nemo with... look at this. There's 2 cruisers and 2 destroyers, myself included, are all thinking, I'm going to have some of that. Enemy destroyer spotted, trying to bring the guns around as I turn to engage this St. Louis. But he's at the extreme limit of range, and he's inside a smoke screen anyway, so I rapidly lost sight of that guy, and instead started putting fire into this St. Louis, as did pretty much everybody else. People are launching torpedoes at him. I'm still too far away to get a torpedo salvo off, but I've got the guns, and the guns are pretty good on American destroyers. I find that you do have the luxury with American destroyers, as this guy is run aground and we set him on fire, of rapidly chopping and changing your ammunition loadout. If you find that you're not doing any damage with armor piercing, it really doesn't cost you much to reload because the guns fire so quickly. And I'm still outside of torpedo range, but I'll keep the fire up with the guns. We set him on fire. He ran aground. He managed to avoid the first torpedo spread. It looks like he's going to... No, there we go. He's been hit, and that's going to cause flooding. We know he's not bothered to repair it because he's still on fire. And he's going down. It's just a question of who's going to get the killing blow, and it wasn't me. And now, once again, here we go. Ambush time. Now, I do make a mistake here. I think that's a Chester Tier 2 cruiser, and I haven't pressed X to select him as a target, so I'm firing these torpedoes blind. But he's got almost nowhere to go here. He's stuck in a narrow channel, and he's sideways on. So I've hit him. I've done a citadel penetration with my high explosive shells and done maximum damage. My first torpedo spread missed, but I'm turning this thing around and I'm going to get the second set of torpedoes away. Again, he just can't maneuver. He's just running aground. Oh, there's a destroyer behind him. Okay. Well, that changes things. Get the torpedoes away and start maneuvering, because that destroyer will have launched torpedoes. And even if he hasn't, you need to act as if he has. I pop my smoke screen again. That Chester is doomed. There is absolutely nothing he can do. There he goes. Ambush tactics. This is how you make American destroyers work, because with a 4.5 kilometer torpedo range, you're going to be well inside people's gun range. You've got to try to make the most of the limited concealment available on the map to hit people from ambush, and if there's no concealment available, that's what your smoke generators are for. Now, destroyers by default get 3 charges with their smoke generator. There is a skill that you can learn on your commander, which will give you an extra 2 charges for a total of 5, and also reduce the recharge time on your smoke generator by 30%. It's a fantastic skill to have. Now, that destroyer that I spotted has just sailed right into the middle of the world's biggest hornet's nest. There are 5 ships shooting at him. I don't know how he survived as long as he did. Well, I do. He deployed his smoke generator and prayed. And I honestly didn't anticipate being able to put any more shots into him. Well, I've loaded armor piercing to start engaging that battleship, but oh, there he is. Well, it would be rude not to take a shot at him, and Jingles, you dirty kill stealer. Hey, a kill's a kill. If 5 of them couldn't sink the guy, it's not my fault that, you know. Now, and this poor battleship is in exactly the same situation that destroyer was. I mean, there's the only other ship on his team. There's no way they can support each other at these kind of ranges, and this guy's got 5 or 6 ships shooting at him. He's given this cruiser up ahead of me some problems, but that's a Japanese cruiser, so he's launched torpedoes at him, hasn't he? And there are 2 destroyers closing in on him. Well, there's 3, but I'm outside of torpedo range, so this guy is so incredibly dead. Look at that. I'm hitting him, but I'm not doing a lot of damage. It's the torpedoes that are going to finish this guy off. There is absolutely no way he's going to survive this. There they go. There they go. There they go. There, he's gone. And now there's only 1 ship left on the enemy team, and he's some distance away. So we're going to skip ahead to when I finally get within range of this guy, and I've been using what available concealment there is to shield me from his gunfire, which meant that he basically had a free shot at the cruiser, which you can just see sinking over there on the right side of the screen, and now he's shooting at the friendly destroyer, which is over there on the left-hand side. The destroyer's launched torpedoes, but they've all missed. This guy's on fire, which means his damage control ability is on cooldown, and I want to start launching torpedoes at him already, but I don't want to run the risk of firing ahead of that friendly destroyer and have him sail into them. But it turns out there's his wreck. He's already sunk. So I'll launch 2 spreads of torpedoes, and then I start manoeuvring and raking this guy with high explosive gunfire, trying to knock out his engine, knock out his steering, reduce his ability to avoid these torpedoes. And one of the torpedoes runs into the sinking wreck of the friendly destroyer, but the other 3 are running true. This guy's staying broadside on because he wants to maximise his firepower, and that's going to cost him his ship as all 3 torpedoes hit him. So how did we do? Well, turns out not too bad at all. 58,000 credits and nearly 2,200 experience. Now that's not base experience, that's including bonuses for the first win of the day. On base experience I actually only earned enough to finish 4th on the team, but it was a good team. Check this out. Top of the list, well, top 4 are all the tier 2s, and right at the top is another Samson. So people will try to tell you that American destroyers are bad because they have poor torpedo range. Well, there's the evidence that they're not. As with so many other things in life, it's not how big it is, it's how you use it. Anyway, innuendos aside, final game in the Samson. Again, it's a tier 3 match. What's going on here? First of all, this is different from the other 2 games. This is an encounter battle, so there's only 1 flag. We've got 2 destroyers and a cruiser heading over there to the starboard side. And they've spotted and they're engaging at least 1 enemy destroyer in that smoke screen. There's a cruiser up ahead of me engaging fire with what looks like an enemy cruiser squadron over there on the port side. And this enemy destroyer, he's either got friends with him that we don't know anything about back in that smoke screen, or he's feeling a hell of a lot more confident than I would be in his position. There's something like 4 or 5 ships shooting at him here. I'm firing high explosive because, well, there you go, 1,400 damage. Destroyers react very, very violently indeed to being hit by high explosive ammunition, particularly because it stands a much, much greater chance of knocking out modules like your engine and your steering, and destroyers that can't move or steer very, very quickly become dead destroyers. Looks like he's managed to not die, and here comes that enemy cruiser squadron. I'm looking at that St. Louis with a big fat om nom 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 nom. I put some shots out, island gets in the way, but I'm not going to kill that guy with guns. Oh no. He's the guy that I want to get. I'm putting some more fire in, and there you can see the torpedoes in the water, which meant that yes, there is indeed another enemy destroyer up there. At the moment, I can't engage that St. Louis, so I'm going to keep putting fire in on these destroyers, help my teammates out. And not that guy. That guy. That's the guy I want to kill next. I'm going to ambush him as he comes around the corner of this island. Switch my torpedoes to narrow spread by pressing 3 twice. First I'm going to have to deal with this destroyer, however, because he's going to be ready to launch a broadside into me. So, still with high explosive loaded. Oh, critical hit. Oh, yes. Come on, finish him off, finish him off. He's gone, which means it's now party time. 1 spread away, 2 spreads away. He's seen me, he's set me on fire. I use my damage control ability, I pop my smoke screen, I start manoeuvring to get the hell out of there, but there is absolutely no way that guy was ever going to survive that. Point blank range, double torpedo spread, there was nothing he could do about it until the very last second, and now I'm getting the hell out of here because I seem to have upset his friends. Totally worth it. But that's exactly the sort of thing that I'm talking about. Ambushing ships at point blank range when your torpedoes are already away before they even know that you're there or are able to point their guns at you. If you want to live a life of romance and adventure, drive American destroyers. Anyway, I can congratulate myself when we're safely back in port. There's still enemy ships to sink. I've successfully managed to disengage from that St. Louis as all of my team go chasing after him, shouting, "Mine, mine, mine, mine." So he has other things to worry about than me. Turn the ship around, torpedoes are reloaded. That's the one good thing. There are, of course, also cruisers in the game, particularly the Japanese cruisers and the American Omaha and Phoenix class cruisers who also get torpedoes, but destroyers get a much faster reload on the torpedoes than the cruisers do. Enemy St. Louis there, running into all kinds of problems. He's on fire, he's not having a very good day, is he? Join the US Navy, they said. See the world, they said. It's a man's life, they said. He probably wants to strangle his recruiter around about now. But he's completely stuffed. He's got ships coming at him from both sides, and they're all armed with torpedoes. There's Japanese cruisers out there. There's destroyers. Here comes a Japanese cruiser right now, who is having problems of his own. The St. Louis has managed to knock his engine out. You can tell because there are flames coming out of his smokestacks. But he's going to have launched torpedoes, and the St. Louis has turned broadside on to try and get as much damage in with his main guns before he goes down. And look at the torpedoes in the water. His crew could quite possibly safely abandon ship by just skipping along the backs of the torpedoes to the nearest point of land. Well, that's what happens when you got 4 or 5 different torpedo-armed ships all circling you like vultures. Now, what have we got left? This was a slaughter, it absolutely was. What's that? 2 cruisers and 1 destroyer. Where's the battleship? Oh, there he is. Way off in the distance. Okay. I'm going to get that destroyer, or at least that's the plan. So, nice tight turn. Pop my smoke. High explosive loaded. There he is. He hit him, but he disappeared as he popped his own smoke. Now, he's going to be spotting me for those 2 cruisers, so this could be potentially problematic. Launch a spread of torpedoes. At that kind of range, against a small, rapidly moving target, I don't really expect to hit him with the torpedoes, but I am still lighting him up, as is the rest of my team, with the high explosive shell fire from the guns. Oh, and I don't know if you noticed, I critted him. I took out his steering. Now, if I'd managed to do that before I'd launched the torpedoes, he'd be dead, because he wouldn't be able to turn to avoid them. But, you know, could have, should have, would have, didn't. I'm obviously manoeuvring here to avoid return fire from those 2 cruisers behind him, because he's lighting me up for those 2 cruisers. Back into the smoke screen. He just took a massive hit there, and he must have just repaired his steering, which was obviously the right thing to do, but now he's burning from that second salvo from what looked like one of our cruisers, and it looks like these 2 guys look like they're almost dead in the water here. So I've anticipated him sailing into my shot, so they of course go long, but I'd adjust my fire, get another shot in. He's disappeared. They're both deep inside that smoke screen, Start firing blind. He's on such low health. One hit is all that it's going to be to kill that guy. And where's he gone? Well, the smoke screen's a double-edged sword here because that's shielding me. Oh, there he is. Well, those two cruisers weren't able to shoot at me because they're right on the other side of the smoke screen. There he is. Come on. Come on. Come on. Let's finish him off. There he is again. Yeah, fired blind and got him. Your ass belongs to me. And let's close in and get that cruiser before the battleship gets involved. Friendly destroyer there with his engine knocked out, which is bad, bad, bad news. Flames coming out of his smokestack. His engine has been crippled. He's going to be dead in the water. Firing to the rear of the friendly destroyer with my torpedoes, so I'm not going to accidentally hit him. And this cruiser looks like... I don't know, I might get him. I might get him. No, he's turning in. He's seen the torpedoes. He's either seen the torpedoes coming or he's turning to get more shots off against that. He's probably just turning to get more shots off against that destroyer behind him, which means my torpedoes missed. And I'm manoeuvring again because I don't want to run aground. And unfortunately I do run aground. But that guy isn't shooting at me, so I'm quite safe. I've switched to armor piercing here, trying to get some plunging fire into his superstructure, but it's just not doing much damage. And he is taking all kinds of fire from this other cruiser. Back to high explosive. Come on. Come on. Come on. That's surely going to finish him off. No? How about this? No? Come on. Sink, will you? Shots out. Yeah, well, I didn't get him, but I did plenty of damage. And that's, you know, damage is what makes points, and points are what make prizes. There's the enemy battleship. There's only two ships left. They've got that battleship and a cruiser. And again, look at the vultures circling. Two battleships there pouring broadsides into each other, and you can see the gunfire rippling along the sides as they're at such close range that their secondary batteries are lighting each other up as well. It looks like they're having fun. It feels almost rude to interrupt. But I'm just about inside torpedo range here. And as long as he's got another battleship to shoot at, he ain't going to be shooting at me. And as long as I don't close to within range of his secondary batteries, I'll probably be quite safe. So torpedoes away. There's actually a fairly good chance that this guy's going to be dead before my torpedoes get anywhere near him. And there they go. Yeah, he's done. Right, I've now pre-selected armor piercing. And I did that anticipating having to continue shooting at that battleship, but it turns out that it wasn't actually a bad idea for shooting at this, which is the last ship left on the enemy team, Tier 3 cruiser. I think it's the Tatsuta. At least I think it's anyway, it's a cruiser. Not entirely sure what it is. Last shot of high explosive out. Doesn't do an awful lot of damage. Armor piercing is now pre-selected. I've popped my smoke just to give myself the maximum chance possible. And the he's moving too quickly for the torpedoes to hit him, so armor piercing salvo. Boom! One penetration, over 4,000 damage, and knocked his engine out. Penetrated his citadel, blew up his boilers, easily managed to avoid his torpedoes, and he's gone. I've hit people with the 14-inch guns on my Congo-class battleship and not done that much damage in a single shot. Well, anyway, nearly 84,000 credits and not far short of 3,000 experience, which isn't bad for a Tier 2 match. Base experience wasn't that high, obviously. It was over 1,900, but not quite as high as 2,800. But still, again, not bad at all for a Tier 2 ship. Destroyers, both American and Japanese, are substantially different to the way that they were in the closed alpha of World of Warships. Playing in the closed alpha, if I was in an American destroyer and you were in an aircraft carrier, you were going to die, and I was going to kill you. It was just a question of where and when. They were probably a little overpowered, and the changes that have been made to the American and Japanese destroyers by nerfing the torpedoes of the American destroyers and nerfing the guns of the Japanese destroyers, I think were definitely a step in the right direction. Of course, when I immediately got into the closed beta and not realizing the changes that had been made, as an alpha tester we were all given a whole bunch of experience, credits and gold, and I blew all of my free experience by going all the way up the American destroyer line to Tier 7 and the Mayhan, which is quite possibly the worst ship in the game. For reasons that we'll go into, when I come to cover the Mahan in its own review. And I had a real hard time adjusting to the difference in playstyle of the American destroyers. Completely different to what I've been used to in the alpha test. I thought they were bad ships, but they're really, really not. It's literally just a question of adapting to a completely different playstyle to what you've been used to. Or if you didn't play in the alpha test and you have played the Japanese destroyers, then adapting to a completely different playstyle to the Japanese destroyers. American destroyers are gunboats first and foremost, and they're short-range torpedo ambushers second most. And as long as you can adjust to that kind of playstyle, you're going to do very, very well in American destroyers. It's definitely a very adrenaline-filled style of playing, and if a life of romance and adventure on the high seas is for you, then I can definitely recommend the American destroyers. As always, folks, hope you enjoyed the video, take care, and I'll catch you next time.